From WBGO, this is Newark Today, your monthly look at what's happening in and around New Jersey's largest city. And now, here's your host, Michael Hill.
Welcome once again to Newark Today on WBGO 88.3 FM. I'm Michael Hill, the host of this show. And we have the Honorable Mayor Ras Baraka with us once again this evening. Well, we have a lot of territory to cover. In the first half hour, we'll be talking about Black History Month. We'll be talking about a new program that Newark is rolling out now it's called Safe Surrender. I'm really interested in hearing more about that. In the second half hour, we'll be talking to Nina Cook-John. She's the architect who's created the Harriet Tubman Monument, and this thing is extraordinary. And we'll also have Linda Harrison. She's the director and CEO of the Newark Museum of Art. She'll join us as well. We want you to participate as well. Topics that we covered tonight, we certainly want your input, what you have to say about so forth, and how you intend to take part in some of the events taking place in Newark, and how you can benefit from being a resident, a citizen of the city of Newark. To chime in, the number here is 973-297-0941. That's 973-297-0941. Let's bring in our guest. Mr. Mayor, thank you once again for joining us, sir.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be here.
How are you and how are your family?
Good. Everybody's great. Thank God.
Good to hear. Good to hear. Let me start off with this, Mr. Mayor. The city of Newark has said it has successfully housed more than 500 plus formerly unhoused citizens or people in Newark in association with the federal government, with HUD. How did the city do this?
Well, we generally do these things anyway. So the grant and the opportunity that we got to do this with HUD, we were able to identify folks that need housing and place them, with the support, the help, of course, of the Housing Authority and DCA and everybody else that usually gets involved. We were able to house these individuals. But this is stuff that happens all the time. This is in conjunction with this program. So, yeah.
How challenging is it to address homelessness in a place like Newark?
Well, you got various things happening. People lose their homes quickly. They lose their place of dwelling where they live at for various reasons. Sometimes, they lose a job, or something happens catastrophic in their family economically, or there's other issues that people have, mental illness, drug addiction, other kind of things that create homelessness in an environment like this. And then people come to the city of Newark because we offer services.
So they know they're going to get help.
Yeah, they know they're going to get help and services. So people park their, for the lack of a better term, they park their bus right here in the city of Newark because they know somebody's going to come and either feed them, give them opportunity to get transitional housing or whatever it is that they need, So, but many of these folks just live out on the sidewalk because, the sheltering and the housing and the home and providing affordable housing is just not enough. It's not in abundance like we need it to be.
You haven't seen coming to Newark any migrants bus from Florida or Texas or any of the southern border places like that?
No, not yet, knock on wood, but we have them coming, the ones that went to New York, they come over here, because once they get here, you can't really stop people from going anywhere else. So they wind up here, and we get a few people who end up at our Office of Homeless Services or at Penn Station. We intercepted about 3 or 4 kids the other day who were migrants. So people wind up in Newark, and we wind up using our services to take care of them.
So you're not turning them away?
No, we don't turn them away. Where would we turn them to? Unless they are have a destination, that they were supposed to go to, and they wound up in Newark short of that destination. We helped them possibly get there, but 9 times out of 10, we wind up taking care of them here.
Is there any plan to do what New York is doing to a certain extent, giving them a bus ticket, and if they want to go to Canada somewhere, get their ticket and go?
We don't have that in our plan right now. By God's grace, we didn't have to do any of those things. I know it's a difficult and intractable situation, so people have come up with all kind of creative things to try to deal with it. But ultimately, we just need housing, and it's not really a municipal. The problem with these municipalities don't have the resources, the bandwidth to kind of handle all of this stuff. So it's really the federal government needs to step in and create a real homeless prevention and homeless intervention program and a program dealing with migrants and an immigration policy that stands strong, that's able to deal with all the issues of folks coming into the United States seeking asylum or whatever.
Do you understand, not that you agree with it, but do you understand the governors from Florida and Texas and Colorado and other places where they say that, look, we have an overabundance of migrants coming across the southern border. So they give them tickets or they put them on a bus and they send them someplace else.
I understand that there's an issue, a problem, and the federal government should have an immigration policy that would encompass strategies to allow people steps to become citizens and figure out how to get that done and place them and house them. But to turn it into like a political football is just like inhumane. To use individuals and pile them on buses and send them to destinations they don't know where they're going, to people's homes and all kind of stuff like that. That's a little cruel. They get out at Nancy Pelosi's house or at Vice President Kamala Harris's house. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, it's not going to help them. So the objective is of helping them is not met. I don't think they're not trying to help these people. They're just trying to use it as a means to make a statement, a political statement.
How do you achieve what you want to achieve in Newark in terms of what your goal is for affordable housing in Newark? I mean, truly affordable. Somebody who's making a family of four, a family of five, where the household income is $50,000 or $60,000, if that much. How can you take care of them?
Well, I mean, in that capacity, that's about 50% of the AMI, and we build housing for folks like that for the most part. You're talking about families of 3 or 4 that make about $34,000.
Right.
That's about 30% of the AMI, and we have invested $20 million earlier to get developers the incentive to develop housing like that. Anything below that is going to take federal subsidy. I mean, it's already costly to build housing as it is in New Jersey. To ask people to build affordable housing, you're asking them to go below the market rate. So way below market rate to accept rents that may not match the investment. So especially the amount of money these people are used to making. So they're looking for subsidy, looking for municipal subsidy, state subsidy, federal subsidy. So, I mean, you need the federal government and the state government to step in and play a heavy role in that.
Let me move on, Mr. Mayor, to a program that Newark is unveiling now on its social media sites, on Instagram and so forth. It's called Safe Surrender. And as I understand it, it's about partnering with houses of worship and some places now that are not considered houses of worship to have people who have warrants to safely surrender. How does that program work?
Well, we set up mostly in houses of worship through the Office of Violence Prevention. And our deputy director, Reverend Slaughter, who runs that part of it and pull together some of the houses of worship and other places that serve as institutions where people can go turn themselves in when they know they have warrants, when they're out there, the police are looking for me or so forth and so on. So you can turn yourself in safely, there with your lawyer, with everybody else. It doesn't mean you'll get arrested. It means you turn yourself in. The police are looking for you for various reasons. And you get to do that without being on the run, which can be dangerous.
I noticed you used the word and you leaned on safely when you talked about this.
Yeah, because I mean, you don't want the police running in your house or stopping you at a traffic stop or anything like that. That can turn deadly even. I mean, it's safer to, if you know you have a warrant and you want to resolve it, to go into a place that we set aside for that with your lawyers present and talking to, folks in the legal system to try to figure out how to turn yourself in or what you're wanted for, what the warrant is about in a safe fashion with community folks and police and legal advice.
But the person will be arrested, though, if you have an outstanding warrant. At the end of all that, you still subject yourself to being arrested.
For the most part. And then there are people who turn themselves in because they think, these guys have a warrant or so forth and so on. So they come in looking, and we facilitate that as well. There have been times when people have come in there and were released. So that is possible.
So somebody has to go to they have to call a number, 973-733-5655. I'll give that number again, 973-733-5655. They have to call and set it up and talk with a social worker who could help arrange all of this.
Yep. And there are locations throughout the city. So in every ward, you can find a place that's close to you and you can go in there and, safely surrender without the police running in your home or pulling you over at a traffic stop or running you down in the supermarket, whatever.
Which can be a dangerous encounter if they show up with the warrant to knock on the
Absolutely.
door and so forth.
Yeah, and we see what's happened nationally in situations like that.
How did the city come up with this program?
Well, we were talking Office of Violence Prevention, juvenile justice, all of the folks together. We got together and had at Prudential, they allowed us to use their space to really have an all-day brainstorming session around the kind of rise in violence and juvenile crime and other kind of issues around juvenile justice and other issues. And one of the things we came up with was that a safe surrender program, amongst other things. And that just was easy to, it's a low-hanging fruit, easy for us to put up, and we did it.
Is it for anyone who has a warrant? It can be a minor thing. What about if
Yes.
somebody has like a murder warrant or
Sure.
something like that?
Absolutely. It's for everything. Everything. Yep. Matter of fact, people turn themselves in who were expected for shootings. So, it's that's probably even better reason you should turn yourself in, because if people think you're armed and dangerous out here, I mean, somebody you can have a warrant doesn't mean is necessarily you, right?
Right, right.
I mean, you might be a person of interest, so it's important for you to turn yourself in if you think that, and not, be out here on the street.
Well, we're talking to Mayor Rasbaraka about Safe Surrender, a new program in Newark that's just been unveiled. And you can find out more by calling 973-733-5655. And we want you to call this station if you have a question about the mayor, about Safe Surrender, or any of the other topics we're talking about tonight. What do you think of Safe Surrender, for instance? Call us here, 973-297-0941. That's 973-297-0941. As we discuss safe surrender and other issues here in the city of Newark. Ms. Mayor, do you know of any other place that's doing something like safe surrender?
Yeah, I think people do, they do programs where people can turn themselves in, like gun buyback programs, or, programs where they allow people to turn themselves in who have warrants. And so they do the kind of amnesty programs and things like that. We are setting one up permanently. So these are permanent places. These are not temporary situations or pop-ups. These things are permanent.
And you said there's one in each ward.
Yep. Is one in every ward. And we just want them to build a relationship with the community, where folks know that this is a place to go. Like even parents that want to bring their kids, because they know their kid is wanted for something, bring your child down there. And it's 100% safer than you being on the street.
It certainly is. Let me move on to another topic here, Mr. Mayor, the teaching of Black history at this particular time. You're
Right.
a former educator, and this country is going through quite an adjustment period, I would call it here, in terms of the teaching of Black history and how it should be taught and what should be taught and so forth. Critical race theory and the opposition to that, because people may not understand exactly what that means. And when I was in school, we all knew about almost the same that some of the kids are learning now, and some of the educators are saying, no, it's time to move beyond that.
Right.
And I want to know your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I just think this turning back time to stop people from reading specific books, banning authors. They banned my dad. He didn't make the cut, in Florida's College Board program. I mean, it does a disservice to millions of Americans. It's unfortunate that you telling people they got to go to the university to learn universal knowledge, but part of that we're going to take from you or keep from you because it makes certain people feel uncomfortable. I'm sure you're not as uncomfortable as the people who went through this stuff. Is important for people to learn all of these things. I mean, you can't teach half of American history in order to get a full understanding of what America was in its infancy and what it's becoming and what we have to, and how far we have to take it. I think that's important for people to really understand that. We study all kind of stuff. We study communism, socialism in the university. Doesn't mean that, we don't stop that because it's not communist or socialist, but we can't study Black people. It's like so contradictory. And, the hypocrisy of it is so big and obvious.
Did anybody ever explain to you why your dad's literature was banned in Florida?
No, he and a few other authors and writers, were pulled out of it, stuff they couldn't handle. I guess it was too much for them. I'm sure they didn't want to teach the kids the Dutchman in some of these schools at the universities. So, I mean, it's just really ridiculous, really.
Should it some of the education you mentioned, higher education a couple of times, but shouldn't this be at least introduced in
Sure.
in high school?
Yeah, I mean, that's what the College Board is. The College Board really sets up courses on the AP level, advanced placement courses that are college level courses
Right.
that kids can take that prepare them for the university. So these topics are completely appropriate for kids that are doing analytical and anecdotal studies of what's happening here and in this country to prepare them for the kind of discussion and thinking at the college level. And to deny people that is really a step towards taking it out of the university, period. And that's a problem, right? To begin taking it out of the university, then you go backwards, because the fight for Black studies led to the fight for Chicano studies,
Right.
Asian studies, women's studies, Native American studies, all came out of that struggle.
Which is American history.
Which is American history, right? And the reason that we have to do that is because American history has just been white history. James Baldwin said the reason why we got to be Black because you insist on being white. So at the end of the day, like, we have to teach this history or it won't get taught or we won't know anything.
Right here in New Jersey, the governor has this for 25 schools, advanced placement Black studies, which he just announced this week. But among the things that are optional, like the teaching of Black Lives Matter movement or slavery reparations, those are optional for schools to do. This is not that they're hot topics, but these are things that
are hot topics.
They're current things to discuss. The country is going through now discussions about slavery reparations, what's proper, how to go about the Black Lives Matter.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
It's necessary. I mean, the struggle for reparations is long. It's and historic. It doesn't begin with this generation.
Right.
I mean, they just heard it recently, but if they studied history, they know the question and talk of reparation is throughout the history of this country. People have been asking, and people have been receiving reparations, whether you're Native American or Japanese from in internment camps. Or the question of reparations is not new and didn't begin with African Americans. But it began with us coming out of slavery. But other people began to latch onto it and begin to receive reparations. We just have not.
And so by excluding these discussions, how much of an education about Black history and really current history can students expect to learn?
Yeah, and I think the problem too is the people that are teaching this have not been taught it themselves. So it's still limited, in that. And the discussion of like the slave narratives and what happened in slavery. They're gonna spend a lot of time there, and I don't even think they're gonna do it justice. But even beyond that, right, and before and beyond that, the expansiveness, the black thought and philosophy and literature and Black revolutionary nationalism and Black socialist and Black capitalist and all this stuff that came out of all of this stuff, the movement here has to be studied and analyzed. I mean, there's some real theology and intellectual thought and philosophy that came and was created because of our relationship to this country here. Matter of fact, there would be no the fight for citizenship is a result of African Americans in Reconstruction, after slavery, who fought to have the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment in place. And the 14th Amendment is the right to citizenship, the right to due process, the same law that's being argued now so that immigrants can become citizens in this country.
What does it say when you have a governor who pushes back against some of the teachings of African American and Black history and puts it under the banner of, well, we're not going to go with that because that's that woke stuff that's going on in the society?
Well, I told a reporter the other day, I don't care if they say it's woke, because the alternative is sleep. So I mean, the idea is that you want us to be asleep and unaware. I mean, then you should be woke. Every American should be woke. Because there's no way to participate and engage in democracy while you're sleeping, right? You have to be alive and woke and engaged in order to have a thriving democracy and a full one. So it's important that happens. What they're trying to do is politicize it and make it such a way that you want to be opposed to it as opposed to understanding what people are talking about.
Let's move on, Mr. Mayor, to another topic here. I want to talk about this. There's an FDU. Fairleigh Dickinson University poll that came out in January, and it looked at potential candidates for the 2025 gubernatorial race. And Ras Baraka scored high in favorability and name recognition. What do you read in that, if anything?
I'm the mayor of the city of Newark, the largest city in the state. People can't stop talking about Newark, good or bad. I just happen to be the mayor right now, and I think people know, because of the things that have been happening in this city. Whether you're talking about lead service lines and the things that we did, the reduction in crime, housing, all the stuff that we're fighting and for. We don't run from issues; we've been running to them, and I think that throws our name out there, throws my name out there, and throws the city out there, so people know that, and they know my name from that. And I've been engaged for a long period of time. Favorability, I'm surprised that happy about. There are at least some people out there who who like what we're doing over here in the city of Newark. Thank God for that. But it means that we have to continue doing the work that we're doing, and I appreciate that. I don't know who decided to do that poll, but yeah.
I have to ask you this: how does this, if at all, informs your consideration in any potential run for governor in 2025?
Well, I think running for governor is much more complex than just, that one poll coming out. I know, obviously, there's a matter of the way the system is set up now, this party system and all of these chairs and the raising of money and all this other stuff. So it's much more complex the decision than just people know who you are and they like you. I think people can like a lot of people that don't have the means to get it done. So, just making sure you have the infrastructure to be able to do what you need to do to actually participate in a run like that. But it would be fun.
Are you doing any of that right now? Planting any seeds right now? Having those kind of discussions?
Well, we going around the state listening to us, talking to people, and people talking to us with elected officials, mostly and community-based kind of organizations, activists, talking about issues. And the real goal of that, honestly, is, we usually talk about issues after the election, and that's just the wrong. We have it backwards in New Jersey, right? So we vote for people who vote for people. And so as opposed to us talking about the issues in the front and putting those issues on the table and supporting people because they support us and what we believe or want, we support individuals that the party or individuals in the party say, vote for this guy, they're going to do, and they wind up not doing any of it. Or half of it, and we run around with our lip poked out, angry, protesting, expecting people to do something that they never promised us to do in the first place.
Right.
Yeah.
So are you essentially doing a listening tour across New Jersey now?
I am right now. With various elected officials have been involved in it. I've been to like maybe 4 or 5 different counties already doing that, and I think it's helpful even to what we're doing in the city of Newark. The issues that we talk about, it gets us statewide support. It allows people to do the kind of things that we're doing and advocate for it on a state level, which helps us, get greater leeway in the things that we want, whether it's money for housing, money for affordable housing, all of the things. If we have more people talking about that, then invariably it'll help our city anyway. So
it sounds like
a win-win.
Pardon me. It sounds like you're laying the foundation for a potential candidacy for governor.
You got to prepare for everything. It's better to be prepared and not do it, and not and want to do it and not be prepared, bro.
Let me move on, Mr. Mayor, to another topic here. On a serious note, I want to know your thoughts on what you saw when you watched what happened to Tyree Nichols in Memphis, because all across the country, people are clamoring for reform with police departments and so forth, and that was just another glaring example of saying, the spotlight needs to be back on this, and we need real reform. What were your thoughts when you saw that?
Well, I thought exactly that we're still struggling for these kind of national reforms here in New Jersey, where the Democrats are in the majority. We still can't get the things in New Jersey. We can't get a subpoena power for Senior Complaint Review Board. We can't get all the other bills, all of the bills that are put on the floor or haven't even been put on the floor around police reform in New Jersey are getting no traction. Which is a problem. The only one that got anything was the independent prosecutor. But other than that, everything else is silent. Nobody else wants to push those things in a democratic state,
in a blue state.
Yeah. So, it's a problem. And Memphis has a predominantly Black and brown police department in a predominantly Black and brown city that's struggling from the rise in crime and violence, as many cities are around the country. And are not equipped to deal with it. And so when you don't have trained officers, when you're in a culture like that, and you treat violence with violence, you see what we get. So that's a problem. and we need to address it like immediately.
Let me ask you this, switching here to another topic, the Harriet Tubman Monument that's going to go up in Newark finally. Why do you want Harriet Tubman in a park right now that has the nation's first president who was a slaveholder?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, but we're getting we getting threatened to be sued. All kind of stuff is going on, man. It's so bizarre. But I should not be shocked by any of this stuff. The Underground Railroad was in Newark, was heavy in New Jersey. I mean, that's because slavery existed in New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey was the last state to abolish slavery here. So, I mean, slavery existed here, and there were bastions of Bergen County, bastions of groups of folks that were abolitionists, churches who spirited, people who were ex-slaves, trying to get them to freedom. And, they say Harriet visited this area. And so we want to hold up a monument to that. I mean, Washington got the park and the street. I mean, can we get one? Lord have mercy. They got to have both things.
But the park's going to be renamed.
Yeah. And the monument is incredible. It's just not a statue. It's an interactive monument. You'll hear Queen Latifah's voice narrating the space. You can walk through it. It's beautiful. And we got money to fix the rest of the park up too. So, I mean, we're just not going to put new wine in old skins. We're going to fix the entire park up and add Harriet Tubman statue there to overpower everything in that area, in that neighborhood.
But based on what you described, you did not want just a statue in the park. You wanted more than that.
Right. We wanted to make a statement and create an educational opportunity and add it to a cultural and educational district next to the library and the museum, NJ Pack. We wanted to encompass all of that in that area and use it as a destination, a place for people to come and visit, not just so we can say we built a statue. Plus, all over the country, people tore down statues but didn't replace them. So it's easy for people to say what they don't want. We just have a problem trying to decide what we do want. And so we decided to put something in the place of the statue that was removed, which was the Columbus statue. And it's the rectory has the statue, but we replaced that.
Mr. Mayor, I thank you for your time, sir. I know you have to go for another engagement there, so thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
That's Mayor Ras Baraka. Thank you for listening this evening. We have much more to come here on Newark Today on WBGO 88.3 FM. When we come back, we'll have Nina Cook-John, who is the architect who's creating the Harriet Tubman Monument. This thing is extraordinary. I did a piece on it for PBS NewsHour last year and had an in-depth conversation with Nina Cook-John, and it is it's fabulous. And also joining us will be Linda Harrison. She's the director and the CEO of the Newark Museum of Art, and the museum will play a central role in using the Tubman Monument in Washington Square Park to help educate people about Black history. More to come. Welcome back to our second half hour here of Newark Today on WBGO. I'm your host, Michael Hill, and this half hour we'll be talking about the Harriet Tubman Monument, which is going to be unveiled in downtown Newark in what is Harriet Tubman Square, the old Washington park there in downtown Newark, right across the street from the museum, right across the street from the library and other art institutions in the city of Newark. Again, I'm your host, Michael Hill. In studio with us is Linda Harrison. She is the director and CEO of the Newark Museum of Art. Linda, thank you for coming in. Always good to see you.
Michael, thank you for having me.
You're
Always
welcome.
a joy.
Always a joy. And on the by remote, we're having Nina Cook-John. She's a Columbia University professor, and she's also the architect and creator of this Harriet Tubman Monument. And Nina, welcome. Thank you for coming in. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, Michael. It's really, really my pleasure to be here to talk about this monument.
I have seen a rendition of this, and I'm going to tell the public now, this thing is extraordinary, what Nina has created. And the partnership with the Newark Museum of Art is also extraordinary in how the museum is going to use this and use the park and use this area to create learning opportunities for so many people not just in Newark, not just in New Jersey, but I would argue probably across the country. Nina, let's start with you, please. Let me ask you this. When you got this, when you were chosen to create this monument, what did you think that you would create?
I thought that this space would be not only a place that marked and broadcasted the statements of fact, which were that Harriet Tubman achieved heroic feats, but also a place in which the people of Newark could essentially find agency through those facts. How could they learn from the past, from these historic events, to propel into the future? So it's not just a static place, but a place that they connect to Harriet Tubman's monument in a way that they could connect it to their own stories, such that it can propel them in imagining new stories for themselves. Because oftentimes monuments are seen as static pieces. You walk around, you read the history, and you walk on. I really, really hope that this would be an engaging public place, that yes, they would read about the history of Harriet Tubman, but they could connect it to their own lives in the way that they can understand her as a person, connect to their own struggles they go through as a person, connect to the ideas of Harriet Tubman being supported by a community of the Underground Railroad, a community that many, many people in Newark oftentimes participate in throughout their daily life. So by humanizing her story, by connecting her story to a larger network, they can then be inspired by it in a very, very tangible way to go out and essentially create similar stories of their own.
The mayor described it in our last half hour as interactive. Let me ask you this: interactive in what way?
Well, interactive, one, in that you don't only walk around it, but you walk in and through it. And as you walk in and through it, you read information on the history of Harriet Tubman herself, her life, but also on the abolitionists in Newark, from Newark, who were working as part of the Underground Railroad as a community to help fugitive enslaves get to freedom. And that text is also tactile. You can touch it. If you're visually impaired, you don't only have to rely on sight, but also there'll be audio component. So the same stories that are etched into the wood panels and the steel will also be narrated. So you can hear at different intervals throughout the day, the stories actually narrated. And then, you can touch the mosaic tiles that have been created by people across Newark. We have over 450 tiles that were created by individuals at different workshops. So those are tactile elements. And then the face of Harriet Tubman at your eye level, again, encourages you to touch. So not only is it interactive by engaging, multiple senses, but you have to walk in and through it and around it to really get the full experience.
You mentioned workshops, Nina, and I want to bring in Linda. Linda, one of those workshops I attended in December of 2021, I believe it was, and I witnessed people in the workshop, at least 40 or 50 people at one of the sessions who were deeply involved in participating and helping to create this monument.
I tell you, first of all, hi, Nina, and thank you for all of the beauty that you are about to bring right in front of our door, outside our doorsteps. We thought about this when Nina was selected. We just thought, I was part of the panel that looked at the different artists, and just her approach, and it may be that her being an architect and artists of public sculpture type pieces really brought home that we wanted to bring the joy to this type of project. And so having people at the museum and working on these tiles, you could see the sense of really participating.
And ownership.
Yes. I like that. That's a really good word, because the being engaged, having that ownership, having that ability to create something along with this great artist called Nina, and it's going to be part of this monument, really helped start defining, having these ambassadors, if you will, going out, letting people know about their the tile that they made, but they are also the ambassadors of this project called Interactive Art Experience. You can do it. Your tile is equally as valuable as Nina's work.
I'm talking this evening on Newark Today to Linda Harrison, the director and CEO of the Newark Museum of Art, and also joining us remotely is Columbia University professor and the architect of the Harriet Tubman Monument in downtown Newark, which is going to be installed next month, Nina Cook-John, who's joining us remotely. If you have a question, a comment, a concern for Nina or for Linda, give us a call, 973 297 0941. That's 973 297 0941, and tell us how you anticipate this monument and what you intend to do once it's installed in March. Linda, I want to ask you that, going back to the workshop, so many people participated, and I used the word ownership. Is that part of the goal in driving, in inviting Newark residents and others in New Jersey, inviting them in to participate and say they can have a piece of this too?
Yes, it is. And I say that because we are trying to be a museum, evolve as a museum that is of value to the various communities. And you don't get that value unless you can relate to it. We're trying to be also a relevant museum and really have the communities feel like this is your cultural hub. This is the place that you can experience not just looking at something. And we know that different people respond differently.
Yes.
You may look at a piece of visual art, or you may listen to that art, or you may experience being a part of it. This is sort of the museum of the 21st century. And that's what we want to convey inside the museum. And when you step outside of the museum, now being at Harriet Tubman Square with the Harriet Tubman Monument, really connects the dots. And we want to keep that communication and connection going between the museum and not having the museum be a static place.
I have to ask you, how does Harriet Tubman Square sound to you?
I love the name. Because it generates, we are taking ownership of this rich history, and why not have this place called the Square? And the Square really conveys the town square, the conversations, the interaction, meeting people or hearing about issues or history that you hadn't heard about. We're expanding that story. We are doing this in our collections, in our galleries, expanding the conversation, expanding the canon, if you will. And that's what I think is happening right outside in a public way with the Square.
Nina, I want to let people know, when this RFP, as some people might call it, was put out there to solicit renditions and artist interpretations and architect interpretations of a monument to Harriet Tubman. You initially were not going to even submit. Am I right?
That's right. So it was an open call, and it went out and said, anyone interested in doing a new Harriet Tubman monument in Newark, please respond. And I didn't initially think of responding because I thought, maybe what they want is a statue of Harriet Tubman sitting on a pedestal, sitting in a square. And that's not the kind of artist that I am. I am a public artist. However, I'm really, really interested in this notion of ownership, but along the lines of belonging in public space. How do we create artwork that's engaging in such a way that you see yourself in it, and you see space for yourself in it, and you see space to connect with other people in it? Because I think it's through that connecting with other people in public space that we feel like citizens of a certain space. And so it wasn't until urging from a friend of mine who told me, we're reconsidering what monuments are now. And so I really think that you should consider responding to this open call. And so I did. And so I was the only one of the finalists who was also an architect. And I think that's only significant in that it was important to me that the monument was spatialized in such a way that it engaged you to walk in and through and around it. But it is a piece of artwork, and a piece that I do hope that the people of Newark can feel is theirs, see themselves in, have ownership of, not only because they participated in the workshops in which they might have made individual tiles, but they feel their story reflected in the historic stories which are in the tiles, and they feel connected to the historic story of Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad in a way that they say, this story resonates with me. I can see modern versions of this story. I can see how this space is opening and welcoming to me. I can see I belong here. And because I belong here, I'm part of Newark, and it's up to me to really take ownership in civic engagement in Newark. So I think it's a ripple effect.
And Nina, you wanted, as you're creating this, you wanted people who visit this to be able to relate to it, as you say, so that they can look into this, they can walk through this, they can listen to the audio productions there, and they can relate to Harriet Tubman's life.
Yes. So, don't get me wrong. She did courageous things that I don't feel like I could do. However, she also did things that many of us would think as everyday things, right? She worked in Cape May as a maid and used that money to support those people who were self-liberated once they made it across the line. Those are really everyday acts that support a larger movement. But also, she would not have made it through those woods and able to do those courageous acts without the support of everyday people who made up the Underground Railroad. So I think it's in connecting to the everydayness and the humanity of Harriet Tubman, recognizing her greatness, but also recognizing that she was also a human being, that we can also recognize a potential greatness within ourselves, and also how the incremental acts that we do daily can ultimately transform that, arc towards social justice that we hear talking about, right? We hear about the greats in social justice movements, but behind them are oftentimes networks of people that support them and allow them to be able to shine in front of the crowd. So whether you see yourself as the crowd behind that makes up the network of support, or you see a path to be able to be that, shining person in front, being able to relate to Harriet Tubman on a personal level can be a place from which you can springboard into some potential change.
Nina, when you submitted your proposal to the panel, did it include some of that narrative that you just shared with us?
Absolutely. I spoke very specifically about the critical design question for me was, how do I put Harriet Tubman on the monument, on the pedestal that she deserves? She's also going to be in a park that still has many other monuments to men that are standing there. She needs to claim her space in that park. And at the same time, make it so that her story is accessible and relatable. And that was definitely a big part of the presentation of the concept.
Linda, I have to ask you about that. I see you smiling as somebody who was on that panel. How impressive was that in terms of someone who is on the panel considering these proposals? How impressive was what Nina put forward?
Well, I tell you, there was a spirited debate about what type of sculpture and the type of monument, because when Nina talked about that modern approach, that modern way to look at this monument, there were monuments that were quite traditional. And in having this debate, I personally knew that I wanted that modern approach so that it would be able to be relatable to folks looking at it, and they would not think that, oh, this is something that happened in the past that I can't relate to, I won't be able to do, I won't, is it even interesting to me? And we were clear that we not only wanted people of Newark, but folks who are not Black, who we want them to understand what this story is. And we knew that as we moved through these discussions, that at the end of the day, it was a modern approach to it. And Nina just at the end blew our minds on. We didn't even think that's what modern would look like, the scale of it, the scope of it, the being able to go through it. But we knew that just having the traditional would not be enough. I love the idea of the taking up space. This really needed to send a message to people. Particularly, I'm one of those people who walk by all these monuments all the time, and they're white. And we really needed that impact. And there are a lot of sculptures out there and statues of Harriet.
In that one park.
Well, there in the park, there are all of these other
Right, exactly.
monuments.
Right.
And there are other types of that traditional approach to what this could have been. And we knew we just didn't want that. But it still took debate to settle on it and get to Nina, because it just at the end of the day, it's like, this is what we want. This is how we want people to be able to relate to a modern interpretation of this so that they could act. These small acts of being revolutionary. How do you do it? And if we just have people being inspired, standing there to go back and how about vote? Just some of the simple things that we want people to be engaged in, that we have to be engaged if we're going to shift and change the landscape of monument across the country. And here we had a very brave mayor who said, we're taking that old monument down, did it. And to be able to have something like this, of this magnitude, it means much more than just looking at a statue. And that's what we want ultimately the message to be. And Nina just blew our mind.
It sounds like what you're saying, Linda, is that when Nina offered her proposal, it showed you what the panel ultimately wanted, the statement that you wanted to make, not just something on a pedestal that would sit there and you can read the inscription and so forth. Did it have the panel? Did it show the panel what the panel may not even have been thinking of was possible?
Well, and that's what happens when you select someone like a really progressive, scholarly, but progressive thought leader like Nina in this combination of architecture, and because I think this is where the scale, and there have been people who have a big scale, but that point of view, we don't know. All we know is we want to go in that direction.
Right.
And then and where are they going to take us? What's the conversation going to be? And that's what brought it all together. And of course, as when we met and Nina started this, the fabrication started coming to life, it just blew our minds. And we said, this is something that 50 years from now, we will be proud that we were able to present a monument, a structure like this, that it is the cultural hub. And people say, meet me at the face.
Linda, do you think then that what you're describing, what Nina has created, do you think then it will become a model for what other monuments become across the country, as people are clamoring to say, take this one down, take that one down, and so forth, but replace it with something else?
Oh, there's no doubt in my mind, because when we're allowed, and when I say we as Black folks are allowed to be at the table and talk about what's possible, we just blow your minds. And this is an example of the type of sculpture, the type of monument that people are going to look at and go, oh, you know what? Let's really break the mold here as we start replacing these monuments, whether they're
literally
in a park,
break the mold,
literally break the mold and walk through it, and really see that not only at a park, but this could be in a public square, in a building, in front of a building. So people start now. I think we are paving the way and pushing the envelope on how a monument can look, and particularly monuments designed by people of color.
Nina, I'm going to bring you back into this conversation. I have to ask you this. When people visit this monument and walk through and listen to the audio productions and so forth, What do you want them to take away from this? What do you want to this monument to, how do you want it to resonate with them?
Well, I think multiple things. I think we all think we know Harriet Tubman. So I do hope that they walk away learning something new. Wow, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. And also not only about Harriet Tubman, but again, there's a lot of information just on Newark abolitionists, that many people just might not have known their role. Wow, I didn't really know that. And in knowing that, be like, wow, a lot of amazing things happened in Newark, and not only recently, just historically. Like this is an amazing place. And then as they move through and they see, the community stories, and they hear the community stories of liberation, it's like, you know what? That happened to me too, or I can participate in that way. So really walking away feeling inspired and poised to act ultimately, right? So I keep thinking about this idea of it being a springboard by giving people agency, really seeing that could be me. That could be me doing the similar things that those Black stagecoach owners who helped people escape to freedom did, right? That could be me, just in terms of that one story that person I heard talking about, who left their audio story, who's still living and walking around in Newark today. So really feeling empowered. And I think also understanding that these small acts, right? These teeny slices that can chip away at kind of institutional injustice are just as important as big, powerful acts.
We have a caller on the line right now. This is James from Newark. James, thank you for calling Newark today. What's your question, your comment, or your concern?
I just wanted to leave a comment to everyone that's involved in this project. I just want to thank you for bringing this to Newark. As a lifetime Newarker, I live here. I'm never moving. It's great to see a monument like this be on right there at one of our colonial parks. We have a Rosa Parks statue, and it's all the way in the back up by the courthouse, and it's good to see a monument like this right there in one of our historic parks. I studied North a lot, and one of the persons I looked up to was Professor Clement Price, and I think he will be so happy to see this come to life. So I just want to thank everyone that's involved. I'm a photographer, a blogger for Newark. I write about Newark, and I'm gonna be sure to take pictures and show everyone the beauty of this monument and how important Newark was to the state and the country.
James, thank you for your call this evening. Nina, you heard James there?
I did. Thank you so much, James. It really, really warms my heart to hear you say that, especially as a lifetime Newarker, and also being just so appreciative of the location. I think, like you said, in one of the colonial parks, it makes a big difference.
And Linda, let me bring you back into the conversation here, because I know that the Newark Museum of Art is looking at this as not just a monument, not just there sitting in the park. You're scheduling and designing programs around this monument as well. Is that right?
Yes. Before I address that, I want to say that there is another inspirational moment happening when people enter this monument, walk through it, and that is that you just may grow up to be a Nina Cook. You just may grow up to be this architect.
Because you'll ask,
public art, right? Who did this? I mean, I don't want us to forget that is part of the inspiration that's happening here as well. That people are going to see Nina's name, look her up, be inspired that this Black woman created this monument that is so magnificent, and there's going to be the little girl or the little boy who goes, first, I'm going to go to school and learn how to do this stuff. And so this is equally as important as the monument itself. For us, the programming, we know that people get and experience and have different conversations in different ways. So for us to create programming around this is what we do with our art objects that are in the museum. We know that people may really want to experience the lecture or the short film or video or performance around this, whether it's dance or music. And so all of this type of programming to support this, we'll be kicking that off with the debut, but we'll be looking at how do we continue that story even inside the museum. And that is equally as important for us because we know people are learning in different ways. And I really do want to get back to just the joy that people will have just smiling that this type of monument was built. This is like when I first walked into the African American Museum of Art and Culture at the Smithsonian and just sat there and saw people just so happy to be a part of it, so proud to see it. That's what I think is going to be happening with this sculpture. It's already happening.
Linda, I'm going to go back to the workshops. I want to ask you this because when I saw the participation there in December of 2021, what I saw was that there was, and the caller here, James, I could hear it in his voice. There is a sense of enthusiasm about this, and I know you heard that.
Yeah, people are probably surprised that we have these kilns in the museum and that we can actually produce things called clay pots and clay tiles. And I think this is what having the museum evolve to be this interactive experience in itself is a continuation of what will be happening out in the square. But there is this excitement when you can feel proud about a cultural space, a cultural hub that you are now participating in. It has social impact in terms of the art. It has economic impact. You know, the people, the volunteers who came, the folks who are working, who are doing that. And it has really a cultural impact of letting people feel proud about art and the art that they are seeing and viewing and that they can bring other people to come and experience.
Nina, I want to get your final thoughts. We have a minute left here. Your final thoughts tonight.
I can't stress enough what an amazing partner the New York Museum of Art has been. I mean, from the very beginning, not only in helping to organize the workshops, in being able to glaze the tiles and fire them there, but really leaning on them for their expertise on the interpretive text that's going to be on this, all the signage integrated into the monument. Every single step of the way, they have been an integral partner. And I really, Linda, cannot thank you and the staff enough. We've also had a lot of support from the Newark Public Library, which is also on that park. I think that entire neighborhood has been extremely supportive of the project. And it was a community process, ultimately.
I want to thank my guest this evening, Nina Cook-John, Columbia University professor and an architect and an artist as well. Also, Linda Harrison, the director and CEO of the Newark Museum of Art. Thank you very much for joining us for this great conversation. Also want to thank the team here tonight, Ang Santos, the producer, Ken Downey Jr., receiving the calls here, the call screener, Corey Goldberg, the board operator, Jamara Wakefield, who is the social media coordinator, and Doug Doyle, our executive producer. I'm your host, Michael Hill. Thank you very much for listening tonight. This is WBGO Newark.